All right, it is 6:30 on November 13th, and our agenda was posted for both the 12th and the 13th, so tonight we will be completing all of the items that we did not complete last night. So it is 6:30, we have a full dais, and I am calling us to order. I'm going to skip over the executive session part because we are going to go into executive session on one item at the end of the agenda as it is posted. Complete error on my part, skipped the city manager's report. So we will be having the city manager's report tonight.
Mayor and council, as many of you know, we struggle with sound quality, both on Facebook as well on our cable channels. We have hired a consultant that is working with Colin and Rick that is mapping our infrastructure internally to see if we can diagnose the problem. So we do appreciate how important the sound is. We do appreciate it is a problem, but please know that we are diligently working on it in an attempt to try and pinpoint the problem so we can resolve it.
City manager, I've had folks tell me that they would rather it not be broadcast than be broadcasted so poorly. I know you guys are looking into it, so if it's not resolved, can we at an appropriate time put it on the agenda and have the discussion? Because the playback, as best I can tell, council, I don't know if you've gotten the playback doesn't have the sound problems.
That's right.
And so what I've been told is it's aggravating to sit down expecting to watch it, but it's not so bad if you know, well, I won't worry about it. I'll watch it tomorrow or the next day or whatever. So if it's not our fault, we're getting blamed for it because we are saying that we're streaming it. I am thrilled that you're looking into it, but can we get a follow-up on that? And if we need an action to say that our policy is going to be that it's recorded but that it's transmitted later?
I'm happy to put that on the November 26th agenda and let y'all talk about it. And it could be you want to do that in the interim, and then we can come back and do it live if we can fix it.
Fantastic.
Will do.
I sure appreciate you visiting about that. All right, council, we're moving on already on page 2, and our first item to cover is item 6A, receive presentation on the quarterly investment report for the period ending September 30th, 2019. Ms. Waldron.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Let's see. Colin, can you take me straight there? So this is the quarterly investment report required by the financial policies ending period September 30th, 2019.
Sorry, Colin. It's 6A.
Right. So as you can see, our ending book balance as of September 30th is $28 million. This is down $4.4 million from the ending book balance in June 30th, mainly due to the bond payments that were paid out in August and also capital projects that are continuing to be paid for out of bond funds. The distribution is still pretty much 46% CDs and securities, 48% pools, and then we have a little bit in demand deposits and money market accounts. Be happy to answer any questions. I did put in my staff report that from last year to this year, our interest earned was up 82% from last year. It's not going to be that great as it has been in 19 and 20, just because the rates are starting to fall. And so we're going to start seeing that in the reports going forward.
All right, thank you, Ms. Waldron. Council, any questions for Ms. Waldron? Excellent job. Thank you very much. We're at 7, citizens' comments. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone signed up for citizens' comments?
No, Mayor.
We are done with citizens' comments. On the consent agenda, since it's only 2 items, I'll read them. 8A, consider action to approve City Council minutes from October 22nd, Joint Council Planning and Zoning, October 22nd, 2019, regular meeting, October 24th, 2019, Board and Commission orientation, and November 5th, 2019, Joint City Council and Construction Standards Board. Item 8B, consider action to approve the second reading of ordinance number 2019-48 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending the budget for fiscal year 2019 in accordance with the existing statutory requirements, appropriating the various amounts herein as attached in Exhibit A, repealing all prior ordinances and actions in conflict herewith, and establishing an effective date.
Move to approve consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda from Councilmember Peterson and a second from Mayor Pro Tem Nelson. Is there any further comment? One, I did have a correction to the October 22nd City Council meeting minutes, and the City Secretary has done that. And what I asked her to do was add in that the City Manager's report that we wrote when we were closing Pecan Street for Halloween, so that that would be memorialized and we would remember. So if we went back a year, we would know that this particular year we closed it from 6 to 8 and what streets we closed it on. I just thought that was a detail that a year from now we may try to remember. And I know there was some discussions about adding the time or whatever, but she has already taken care of that, and it was a minor deal, but I wanted you to know that that change had happened. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes. Thank you, Council. We are now moving, Colin, to item 9A. Consider action to approve Resolution 2019-110 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, regarding the Bastrop Central Appraisal District election voting for 2021 Board of Directors, establishing a repealing clause and providing an effective date. So, Council, you saw in your packet there are 4 board members that are running for re-election. I didn't bring my right notes with me. That are running for re-election, and 5. And let's see, 9A. We get 210 votes, and if you divide the 210 by 5, it's 42 votes for each person. So that is a way that we can do it, and I offer that as one way, but I'm willing to entertain any other ways that folks would like to vote for the 5 candidates that are up for re-election. Councilmember Jackson?
I appreciate your recommendation. I would recommend that we would support people that are from the city of Bastrop. I mean, it's just 210 votes in the school district, and several other people have many more, so our votes are not as significant as some of the others, but I know that Roderick Emanuel is a citizen of the city of Bastrop. I'm not sure about the others. I know that 2 at least, or 3 of the other ones are not, so I would like to personally suggest that we support our citizens, our resident, at least here in Bastrop.
So is that a motion?
That is a motion.
So do you want all 210 votes to go to Mr. Roderick?
I would like for that to happen, yes.
Okay, so I have a motion for 210 votes to go to Emmanuel Roderick, or Roderick Emmanuel, I should say.
Second.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Jackson. I have a second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
No, you go first. Councilmember Rogers.
Oh, Councilmember Rogers? Sorry, I was looking down.
I kind of liked your idea of spreading them out. I mean, just because, I mean, it is a Bastrop County seat, not just a city seat, but, you know, those are just kind of my thoughts.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Well, all 5 of them are, there's 5 openings, and we have 5 candidates, so it's 6 one way, half dozen the other. They're all going to, if each one of them gets 1 vote, they're all on their appraisal district board.
Yes, that is correct. Sir.
Just confirming that thought, thank you.
Okay. So is there any further discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Ennis?
I went to second this, and Councilmember Peterson beat me, but the only thing that troubles me is whether there's anybody else from Bastrop.
I don't think so. I was looking at, I know David Glass is from Elgin, and Dennis Snyder's from
From
Smithville.
Smithville, isn't he?
Mhm. David Red and Bill Hector, I don't even know, so.
Okay, thank you.
But I mean, not saying that they're not good people or anything, I just would like to support our, as I said, our residents, and even though they're all going to be elected, we have such, such a few number of votes. I mean, our, just 210, whereas some of the others have hundreds and some have over 1,000. So our vote, I think, would be a statement for us as a city to support our citizens.
Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Jackson,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. We are now on page 3. We'll remind you that items 9B and 9C were pulled, along with 9D and 9E. I expect all of those items to be back on our next agenda. That brings us to item 9F that we did not cover last night. That item is being pulled. Angel Brothers Enterprises would like to be here to present, and they had... Oh, okay. Angel Brothers is the contractor, but Walker Partners is the engineer. You'll recall that this was they bid the work after the TxDOT bid opening, and there's a conversation they would like to have, but the engineer has had a family emergency. There's not anything that was going to be built between now and the next council meeting, so that item is pulled. 9F is pulled. That's the only reason why, is he would like an opportunity to present and talk to us. So that's pulled, and we will see that on the next agenda. We took care of 9G last night. We more than discussed 9H last night. That was pulled and is coming back. We have completed 9I, J, and K, which brings us to 9L. So I'm at 9L, Colin. Consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2019-56 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, repealing and replacing Chapter 6, Health and Sanitation, as attached in Exhibit A, and repealing and replacing Chapter 8, Offenses and Nuisances, as attached in Exhibit B, and providing for findings of fact, adoption, repealer and severability, and enforcement, establishing an effective date and proper notice and meeting, and move to include on the November 26, 2019 agenda for a second reading. Chief.
Yes. Mayor, Council, good evening. Tonight I'm here to give you a quick overview of our new and of course improved nuisance code ordinances. You'll recall about a month ago I gave a brief PowerPoint presentation, and then we discussed some of the hot topics and the nuisances, and you gave me some recommendations. So what I did was I put those recommendations into 2 new chapters, Chapter 6 and Chapter 8. Some of the purpose and goals why we accomplished this was we ensured that they were clear, concise, they were fair, and we wanted to make them as easily enforceable as possible. We wanted to make sure our definitions were solid, the due process, the abatement, any civil remedies, and then rewards were well organized. They were easy to follow, didn't have any duplication, and then those were going to be easy to find as well. And lastly, we wanted to stick with the community values, our public safety, and then with the nuisances. So the methodology, I decided to break it into 2 chapters, Chapter 6 and Chapter 8. Chapter 6 deals with the public nuisances and how we'll manage the violations, and includes the abatement and then the civil remedies. Chapter 8 is going to be our general health and sanitation regulations, our other violations, and then those hot topics that were light, noise, and then odor. So these are going to be the major revisions. So on the left is just going to be kind of what I'm referencing to, and on the right is going to be the actual revision. So the first one is 6.02. This is going to be some updated definitions. We updated the abandoned motor vehicle and the junked motor vehicle, along with added definition of dangerous building and/or structures. And what we wanted to do is make sure that we are consistent with Texas code, and now we are. The 6.02, we took out the definition for health officer. We don't have a health officer. And what I decided to do was make that the Public Works Director or as a designatee, and this is really going to apply towards mosquito control. 6.06, abatement. we changed this from administrative hearing conducted before the city manager to be conducted in front of the chief of police. So there you go, sir. I want to throw one at you. Abatement and weeds without notice. This is one that we wanted to make sure we were within state law, and that so anything that's over 48 inches and is an immediate danger to public, is that when we can abate it without notice. 6.07, this is abatement procedures for substandard buildings, and we just wanted to follow the local, the Texas Local Code 214, and it just really is the requirements for abating the procedures through the administrative process. 6.08 and then 6.09, we really just use the Texas code to follow that to make sure we're within state law. And then finally, abatement of junked vehicles, we clarified and updated the language to be consistent with state law again. So Chapter 8 was really completely reorganized. A lot of the stuffs that were in the prior Chapter 6 were moved to Chapter 8, and these are really the nuisance codes that we talked about in that last PowerPoint.
Yeah, Chief, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry for interrupting you. If you go back a slide, y'all know how I am, on page 16 of 26, which is page 471 of the packet, 6.07.008 calls out Construction Standard Board of Adjustment and Appeals Orders, and we don't have a board that has that title.
And what page was this again? You said 16 of?
16 of 26, it's 471 in the packet, and it calls out a board that we don't have a title to, and then it, throughout the next paragraphs, it says the board, a board. So I think it's referencing this board, and so I think it's an easy cleanup, but our board's not called that.
It's the Construction Standards Board.
Okay.
Period.
Okay.
And the reason I wondered if it mattered is this ordinance expecting them to appeal something, and do they have the, you know what I'm saying?
And that'd be something I'd have to just refer to the city attorney.
Yeah, so that caught my eye, and I was like, I'm not knowing what this board is, and.
So the reason that it is the Construction Standards Board is anytime you abate anything related to the authority of the building official, it is automatically appealed to the Construction Standards Board.
Perfect, and I'm fine with that, and it made sense to me why it was them. I just
Yes.
want the titles to match
Yes,
up.
Okay.
ma'am. So it just needs to be Construction Standards Board.
Sorry, I just thought we'd do that while you were still on Chapter 6, so.
All right.
Thank you.
Once again, we reorganized Chapter 8 and moving down to the current code of 8.01, driving across sidewalks. We just went ahead and took that out because that's going to be covered already by the traffic code. And the same thing with the current code 8.02, removing or occupying city property. We've basically just taken that out, and we're going to rely on Texas law for criminal trespass. Rewards, we updated the rewards for damage to city property language. 8.02, abatement or obstruction at intersections. That's already going to be, and that's like if you got weeds or, trees that are covering an intersection, that's going to be addressed in Chapter 6, so it's taken out of 8. 8.02, camping and loitering, we just clarified and reorganized, but the spirit of the ordinance or the past ordinance hasn't changed. Once again, camping and loitering, we clarified and reorganized, but the spirit hasn't changed, and then we can also follow state law if that's what we need to do.
So Clint, just because it seems to be that we're shuffling things back and forth, the city attorney's office had a rhyme and reason to Chapter 6 and Chapter 8. Why don't you share with the council what the logic was?
Yes, so originally what we had is we wanted to put all of the nuisances in one chapter, and that was going to be, I guess for a better term, called the mothership. Well, what happened was the mothership became very large, it became voluminous, and it was almost hard to drive. I mean, it was going to be 160 pages long, and we tried to kind of narrow that down. And so I consulted with Aaron quite a bit on it, and what happens, because it was so large, it didn't fit the process of being able to find stuff easily. So then what was decided is we'll kind of have Chapter 6, which is it has some nuisances, but really how we're going to do the abatements and enforcement. And then as Chapter 8 is really the true nuisances that we're talking about. So injuring trees, that was in there as well. We clarified language and can also use state law. Signs at businesses. Originally, this was that signs in front of businesses in the central business district had to be removed by 5 p.m., but we updated that. That could also follow state law, but also at their closing time. Section 8.03, all must conform to regulations, and this just basically says that we're going to form the county, state, federal law. Noise is now enforceable, so our new DBA max is 75 in the residential in the daytime, and then 75 in residential at nighttime. And it originally was going to be 80 and then 85. We created a new exemption, so the bottom one for the whistle and trains, for the noon whistle and trains. Smoke and particulate matter, this just regulates the smoke and particulate matter. Regulating storage fire explosive, we're prohibiting storage and fire explosive and hazardous, and also follows the state law. Regulations for toxic or noxious materials, that's exactly what it says. We just put in the regulations. Vibrations, nothing can be excessive vibrations. I guess if they're doing some sort of equipment, we can measure that. The abatement of trees, that was going to be moved to Chapter 6. Remove the mandatory review of regulations under Division 3, which is the original curfew, and it's just not necessary. The City Council can review those regulations at any time, and it was set for every 3 years. Something along with the building codes, 8.04 was the removing of awnings, and this had conflicted with our sign ordinance. And then remove some language on 8.04 that was removing about the traveling public, and that's just also going to rely on Texas state law.
On the review, I'm fine with removing the mandatory, a mandatory, because then that puts you in where you're out of compliance and all of that. But council, it feels like it's something that we ought to, I don't even care if it's like, yes, we've looked at it and we don't want to change anything, but do we want to talk about it once a year? The reason I'm thinking about it is we are going to be really relying on these nuisance now that we're going to not having uses. And if the chief's having problems with enforcement, or boy, the decibels were set at 70 and our whole life would be easier if it was 75 or something, is it worth kind of planning a point of just doubling back and making sure that we're okay with them? Because otherwise we won't look at him at all. Or do we want to just depend on if he has a problem, he'll let us know? Councilmember Rogers?
Well, I think that's a good point. At least going forward, since it's a new way of doing business, it wouldn't be bad for the next, to look at them once a year for at least until we know what we've got, where we're standing.
Or maybe even, I would also be like, let's just look at them in a year and decide then, like, it's no problem, we don't care, it doesn't matter. But for the land use regulations that we approved, this is how we are going to manage the city. They're a big deal.
Okay. Well, and originally this was just going to be under really, and it seemed like it was kind of out of place. And this was part of the problem that we had with some of the ordinances is this was really just under the curfew portion, but it also implied that it was talking about everything else as well, so it was very confusing.
Mayor, in response to your comment, I would suggest we do it in June when we do everything so we can have a holistic conversation. And I stand corrected. I gave you bad information. Chapter 3 of the Code of Ordinances, Article 3.02, calls the Construction Standards Board the Construction Standards Board of Adjustments and Appeals. And that's in your current ordinance.
But we don't have that written down anywhere else.
You were amending it tonight or last night in your...
And we amended it to make it be that?
No, that's what it is now
That's
in
what
the
it is
Code
now.
of Ordinances.
We just don't ever call it that.
That's the problem. We stop
Okay.
at Construction Standards Board.
Okay. Okay. Well, I was just looking for consistency, and thank y'all for double checking that. Great.
All right, 8.04 is firearms in a city building, and it just prohibits when we can or cannot carry firearms within a city building. So if, of course, it's during court, or if it's polling or it's a meeting like this, you can't carry. Minors in curfew, we just updated the title from minors to minors curfew, just kept it a little bit easier to follow. And then curfew hours, we changed those from 1.5 hour before sunrise to that 5 o'clock, just to make it a little bit, 5 o'clock a.m. to make it more enforceable. And then with the new age of legal, being able to buy tobacco at age 21, we decided just to rely on state law, and Division 2 was taken out completely. And that is it. Do you have any questions?
Will tobacco take care of marijuana if when that happens, or we'll add that
We'll
and just
deal with
follow
that separate.
Texas state law?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's coming. Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yeah, Chief, under section 6.06.002, moving the appeals process from the city manager's office to the police chief, in order to create greater opportunity for participation, should we add in his and/or his designee? From a time management standpoint, it seems like that might create greater opportunity to listen to those appeals.
Yeah. We rarely get appeals, but I can see as we start to really enforce these and trying to get people to comply, we might get more.
Mayor Pro Tem, we're challenged right now with depth because code enforcement reports to the assistant chief. The span of control makes the chief the logical person to hear it without having a dog in the hunt, because you're essentially delegating up and not down. So just to ensure that there is not any cloud of concern as to who's been appointed and the reporting structure of the assistant chief, and I can't overturn the assistant chief. I work for him and I'll be penalized. It really makes sense for the chief to be that point.
Okay, I was looking to have a redundant process in there, but that's a perfect explanation. Thank you.
All right.
Wait,
I'm sorry.
I have a couple
And
more.
more.
I'm sorry.
Keep going.
On page 486, let me get to it. I apologize.
And he probably has the ordinance in front of him. So
Yeah.
I tell him to go.
8.02.005. You'd mentioned in your report that it may not stand up constitutionally. I mean, are we continuing to check into the validity of our ordinance if it's not going to stand up to legal scrutiny?
And that is going to be in reference to the camping. Is that what you're?
Correct.
Okay. There's just been a lot of discussion about camping lately, particularly with Austin and all their new rules and regulations and how they kind of go back and forth. So we didn't change anything, and I think that we are solid on that point. We just don't allow camping in any public area, and without it being some sort of designated, or if they have permission from the private property owner that they can stay there. So I think we're covered.
All right. Well, my reading indicated that we were, but I was
Yes.
just concerned about your comment that you're not
Yeah,
sure
that was
how to
actually going to be the
stand
city attorney's comment, and I understand. So what we did was we just kind of just made sure that we were consistent, and we stayed. This is one of those ones that really, it just moved. It stayed the same.
Just
There's
picked it up,
nothing
put it in a
different.
better
Yes.
spot.
Yeah,
Then-
reposition is going to be.
Then
Yeah.
I'm good. And then on 498, section 8.04.003, I scribbled some notes and I can't read my own dead notes, so. bear
Page
with me.
17.
One moment, Chief, and I'll be with you. All right, you already answered that. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Your time is up.
Well, I wanted to get clarity because they really worked hard on this. I want to make sure that we've addressed every issue that's in there, and I'm going somewhat off of his notes and his staff report. And so I appreciate the indulgence for the time, but you've already answered the
Okay.
question, so thank you.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any comments or questions for Chief? Councilmember Ennis?
I'd just like to say we really do appreciate all the hard work that's going into this.
Well, thank you. Thank
And
you.
I recognize it.
I have never read so much and highlighted so much and then read so much and highlighted so much. I was so
Good for you. Well, and I'm really agreeable, and it does not need to be in the ordinance, but if we'll get it on the calendar, the thing about June is that's like a good 7 months, and we will have had an opportunity we will have been through the holidays, we would have been through a change of seasons, and we'll know if it's like, oh man, wish we could make a revision or not. And it's not at all, I'm not trying to criticize your work. I think you've done a great job. I think we won't know what the consequences are till we live with it and try to enforce it. Okay. And if we can do a tweak and make it easier on the citizens and on you, then I think we should be open to doing that.
Yeah, I think our process for enforcing these is going to be good. And I think you'll be happy with the product that finally comes out.
Excellent. I have 3 lights on. Does anybody know who was first? Councilmember Peterson?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2019-56.
Second.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Peterson and a second from Councilmember Ennis. Councilmember Rogers, do you have a comment?
I had a question, but it wasn't about the ordinance, but it was for the chief.
Go ahead.
Okay, I have a question, just because we're on the nuisance, and we did talk about the food trailers yesterday. And I know the gentleman brought up, if you had a generator, would those generators cause so much noise that it would be in conflict with our noise?
They very well could be. So if you have a quiet generator, then it's not going to. But if you have, a generator that is relatively loud, so maybe if you get, because you can buy, a cheap one that's very loud to a more expensive one that's very quiet. And if you buy a cheap one, it probably is going to be in violation.
Oh, okay. That way, if we're thinking about writing the ordinance, we may put, if your generator up to however you measure it, we could put that so they would know that to have a food truck with the generator, you have to have a generator that's only this loud or whichever.
Now,
so that's the reason I wanted to ask you that question.
The important thing is, now how big of a piece of land are they on? Because we measure it from the actual property line. Yeah, so if it's 100 yards away, then it's not a problem. Now, if it's
that was going to be my point, ma'am. There's a whole lot that goes into our ability to measure, and it depends. But what I think I hear you saying is we need to reference the nuisance ordinance when we mention the generator.
Right, that's what I just wanted to make sure that that way we wouldn't ask them to have a generator, and then that would be against what
I think that's a great point, because you don't want to give somebody a permit and then you're giving them a citation the next day because you didn't tell them that you permitted them for the food truck, but you didn't tell them that you're and that's your point, right? Like, just tell the whole story. So, yeah, and then don't speed when you're leaving town. Okay, any other comments or questions on the motion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
All right, council, motion passes unanimously. Ordinance 2019-56 is approved, and excellent job, Chief Nagy. Thank you so much. Really, really good job. All right, council, we're on the bottom of page 4. We're on item 9M. Most of you will remember that we spoke about this at our joint meeting on November 5th, and I will read as fast as I can. Consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance 2019-61 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, adopting the International Building Code 2018, amending Chapter 3 Building Regulations, Section 3.04.001, Building Code adopted, adopting the National Electric Code 2017, amending Section 3.05.031 Electrical Code, adopting International Plumbing Code 2018, amending Section 3.06.031 Plumbing Code adopted, adopting International Mechanical Code 2018, amending Section 3.07.001 Mechanical Code adopted, adopting International Fuel Gas Code 2018, amending Section 3.08.001 Fuel Gas Code, adopting International Residential Code 2018, amending Section 3.09.001 Residential Code, adopting International Energy Conservation Code 2018, amending Section 3.10.001 Energy Conservation Code, adopting International Green Construction Code 2018, amending Section 3.14.001 International Green Construction Code, adopting the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code 2018, amending Section 3.15.001 Swimming Pool Code, repealing Section 3.15.002 Screening and Fencing, adopting International Existing Building Code 2018, amending Section 3.13.001 Existing Building Code adopted, and adopting the International Fire Code 2018, amending Chapter 5, Fire Prevention and Protection. Section 5.02.001 Fire Code adopted, repealing Article 5.03 Life Safety Code, repealing Article 5.04 to 5.06 Reserved, repealing Article 5.07 Fire Lanes, repealing Article 5.08 Reserved as attached in Exhibit A, and providing for findings of fact, adoption and amendment, repealer, severability, enforcement, establishment of an effective date, proper notice and meeting, move to include on the November 26, 2019 agenda for a second reading. Chief Rosales. You need shorter captions.
Sorry.
I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
Mayor, Council, City Manager, as we spoke at our Construction Standards Board workshop, the Construction Standards Board worked really hard over the last couple months, really evaluating all these international codes. And as you see on the screen, those are all the codes that we went through for the 2018 version minus the 2017 for the National Electric Code. We made the local amendments to these following codes: the residential code, plumbing code, building code, and fire code. Those were the local amendments that we spoke of during the workshop. Those amendments, real quick, just a brief overview. We amended the residential code 3.02, the 10 inches of 5/8 gypsum board required on each side of the furnace equipment during where a heating appliance is applied in any space. We removed in 1104 for the lighting to be 90% efficiency lamps. We amended section P 2801.6.1 to allow the PVC to be listed as an approved material in the table shown. And then in the plumbing code, we removed the IPC 308.10 to allow for the 2.4 gallons to be supported by rigid pipe instead of the expansion tanks now listed. The International Building Code, we amended that table, 1004.5, to allow the occupant load calculations to remain the same as they are today. As we discussed last time, we discussed those more in the fire code. We also amended the fire code, section chapter 1. We covered those with we have to add the deputies. We authorized personnel besides myself. We allowed the photographic documentation. And then we added violation penalties that weren't in there, and also established fines that needed to be just filled in blanks. We also amended Chapter 307, the prohibited burning, just no open burning with the few exceptions that we talked about, and then some of them required permits with the exception of your barbecue grills and your chimeneas and your fire pits outside, those small fire pits. We amended 503.2.3 for surfaces. This was due to the building Bastrop codes. We wanted some additional surfaces to be added that were all weathered as long as they meet the standard, and they're engineered to share the load of our 80,000 pound apparatus. They can use the alternate methods as approved by the fire department. We amended section 903.2.11.3, the building. This was one of the occupancy load calculation differences that we changed for a 3-story building, as y'all requested to go from the foot to the 3 stories or high, more in height. An automatic sprinkler system must be installed, and then this was a concession made during the occupancy load for the tables in 1004.
And you're still okay with that?
Still okay with it.
Construction board's okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, everybody was good with it. We have this was just it was give or take, and we'd rather have the more occupants as long as they're safer, so we got the safety out of it. Business areas, this was amending that table. As we spoke before, we amended it to allow the square footage, as we talked about, the gross square footage from 150 to 100. So this is just keeping it as it is today on the 2009 code. And then we made no local amendments to these as written. They are all adopted with all appendices. And that is it. Any questions? The ordinance was attached, had a red line version and a clean version. One of the ones that we did repeal was the fire lane. The reason we appealed it out of the ordinance was it was duplicate. It was in the ordinance written, and it's also in the fire code. So we took it out of the ordinance and left it in the fire code. So in the future, if we change fire code, it just follows with it instead of having to change the ordinance with the fire code each time. That was the reason for repealing that one. And there was one other one that we repealed. The life safety code. So NFPA 101 was the life safety code. It's a duplicate or less restrictive code than the fire code. It's the NFPA version of the ICC. Since we're staying with the ICC, there's no reason to have the life safety code, so that's why we repealed it as well. Any questions?
Chief Rosales, you did an outstanding job on November 5th, and you've also done an outstanding job tonight.
Thank you.
We want to thank you and the Construction Standards Board. They really did yeoman's work to get it all done. And Council, you'll remember on November 5th, we talked about that they were really striving that we don't price ourselves out and make the recommendations so strict that you can't exist, but we also prioritize safety. So trying to hit that sweet spot of making things available and reasonable, but keeping people safe. So I really appreciate y'all's work on that.
Absolutely.
Council, do you have any questions for Chief Rosales? Councilmember?
I move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Rogers. Second. I have a second from Councilmember Jackson. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor, is this the first reading or the second reading?
This is the first reading. It feels like the second time because we had the joint meeting. So it'll be on the second reading. Council, are we allowed to put it on for consent? Councilmember Rogers, would you like your motion to put that on for consent?
Oh, yes.
All right. And Councilmember Jackson, are you agreeable to that? You asked the person who was. So is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. The motion passes unanimously. We are all the way over to page 6. Colin, we are going to 9X. 9X, consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance 2019-60 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending the Bastrop City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 13, Utilities, adding Article 13.12, Impact Fees, and providing for findings of fact, enactment, enforcement, or repeal and severability, establishing an effective date, and proper notice and meeting. Ms. Umble.
Mayor and council, this is super simple. The impact fees have been located in Chapter 14, which is your zoning ordinance. We have not enclosed them. We have not included them in the Building Bastrop Code. We are moving them in their entirety, Chapter 13 utilities, because the impact fees deal with water and wastewater. There is no change. We literally pulled the words out of one ordinance and are dropping it in Chapter 13, and the only reason you're doing this is for codification purposes and giving it a home.
And the fees themselves are something that are reviewed and have nothing to do with this.
That's right. We're changing nothing other than its location in the code.
Council, any questions for the city manager?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion to approve from Mayor Pro Tem Nelson and a second from Councilmember Rogers. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. As promised, we're on page 7, executive session. We are going to go into executive session for item 10B. City Council shall convene and to close executive session pursuant to section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code to confer with the city attorney regarding fire inspections of child care facilities and schools. It is 7:14 and we are in executive session. All righty. Okay, it is 7:53. We are out of executive session. There will be no action items taken as a result of executive session. So at 7:54, Councilmember Peterson?
Mayor, I move to adjourn.
It is 7:54, and we are adjourned. Thank you.